that's just something jiu-jitsu has given me. It's just like whenever you're in a bad spot, slow things down, take a deep breath, and try to think of all the positivity and try to think of a way to get out of this bad situation.
Welcome to the Fuel Hunt Show.
What's going on, Eagles? Welcome to the Fuel Hunt Show. Today we are joined by multiple-time IBJJF gold medalist, co-founder of Movement Art Jiu-Jitsu, and black belt under Mikey Musumeci, and one of my coaches, Nick Salles.
Hey.
Nick, welcome to the Fuel Hunt Show.
Thank
I'm
you,
here
guys.
too.
Yeah.
And that guy.
And this guy, the color commentary guy today.
No, but I appreciate it, man. Thank you guys for having me on here. I'm a huge fan of your guys. One thing me and Danny really look up to you guys with is like how you guys transcended this idea of just being a brand and creating more than that, creating a community. And that's something we strive to do with Movement Art, even though it's like more on a smaller local scale. I think you guys are definitely, in the big leagues compared to us. But yeah, we look up to you guys, and you guys inspire us. And funny story, actually, I wanted to share this with you. Before I met Drew, Sean Brady was training with us, and he collaborated on a post with you guys. It was like a cool no-gi set. And I remember being like, oh, man, like that looks really cool. And I clicked on the Instagram and just immediately resonated with the imagery and the message that you guys were sharing with the public. And, for those who don't know, I have like a giant eagle tattoo on my chest. So immediately I'm like, these are my guys, and little did I know I would meet you soonly after that. And we connected right away. So yeah, I appreciate you guys. And thank you guys for having me on here, sharing my story, my experiences with you guys.
Well, what a way to start. That was probably the best.
We could probably just end
beginning.
it. Let's end the show. Let's end there.
That means a lot to me. I mean, we put a lot of time, thought, effort into what we were creating. A lot of people come out the gate, they would say we want to sell t-shirts, we want to start a brand, but they really don't even put a lot of thought, effort in it. And the thing that me and Joey are big sticklers on is intention into what they're trying to build. You know what I mean? Like, how do we want people to feel when they wear this? And that's where it all started for us.
Yeah, and you can feel it. Like, there's lots of brands, and I'm not, talking down on them or whatever, but you go on the page, and it feels very just surface with them, and you can tell they're just going for an aesthetic, or they're just trying to chase a fad and monetize it and make money off that. But right away, like on your guys' page, between the motivational stuff and the community stuff that Joey, that you're doing with like all the runs and stuff like that, like right away you can tell it's a lot more than that. And for us, a jiu-jitsu business that's trying to stick out from the rest and trying to give back to the community and change how people see jiu-jitsu, like we look to you guys and we're like, what are they doing right, and how can we implement that into our framework, right? And so, and then a lot of the things we're doing similarly, and so we connect on that, and I resonate with that. So, yeah, like right away you can tell.
And that's I told Joe when I first came to the movement, I was like, I feel like I found my people. Like you and Danny feel like some of my closest friends, and like we literally just met like months ago. You know what I mean? It's
I feel like I knew you like forever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, these are the people I'm supposed to be around, and like if I'm gonna spend a lot of my time doing this jiu-jitsu stuff, like not only should I be learning from the best, but I should be spending my time with people that uplift me. And like we were talking about in our episode of the feed, like you want to be around people that are on the same wavelength as you. And like I literally like I'm so excited to go there every day and just like learn from them, and then their energy when they're coaching, like. And we literally just skipped across my whole agenda.
No, this is good.
The energy and the vibration when you're in there, it just is a true testament to some people that love what they're doing. You know what I mean? They're on their path.
Well, you can, like Nick said, like you can feel it. You can feel it when you're there.
It's tangible.
Just like you can feel what we're doing. And that's because we were never really concerned about the brand aspect. It was more the bond between people.
And we could potentially be a lot more successful entrepreneur. Like,
probably, yeah.
The
Same
people,
with us,
the people
right?
we're talking about, we're
Yeah.
like, they're probably making way more money than us.
Dude,
like,
right away, we were like, all right, what don't we want, right? And,
Mm-hmm.
Danny and I, we have a long history of training at different gyms. Some are mom and pop,
Mm-hmm.
some are world-class facilities. And we just looked at everything. Like, we created a list of pros and cons and went down to the nitty-gritty of, like, this feels very cult-like.
Yeah.
This makes people feel like dollar signs, and just eliminated those possibilities. So, for starters, like a lot of gyms will have it so that you have to wear a certain uniform, right? Or you have to wear a certain color gi or stuff like that.
Not familiar.
Yeah, right? you know all about that. And so like that was one of the first things, like as soon as you remove people's freedom to express themselves, you're already removing that aspect of the community and make it what you want it to be. And I never wanted to change people. I always wanted to create an environment where anyone can thrive. You know, everyone has something they can share. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. So we want to cultivate an environment where anyone can come in and kind of lean into their strengths and provide something that's unique about them to the community. And so those were like the first things, like no uniforms, really, not taking anyone's personal identity away from them. So
It's so interesting to say that because I never thought about it that way. But I always said in business, like this is my area of expertise, but like you can't put a ping pong table in a break room and call it culture, call it community, right? So
That's good,
you're
yeah.
almost doing the same thing by making them wear the team geese. You're trying to force community or force team or force
Exactly.
culture when it has realistically the opposite effect.
exactly.
What we wear is so important, and like you said, when you force somebody to wear something, and we're not beating on that, it's just a great example.
Exactly,
When
yeah.
you force somebody to wear something, you're taking a piece of their identity. The important thing to know is if you want a high vibrating place, right? Everybody has to be their authentic selves. So when you start chipping away at their identity, you take away their authenticity, that brings the vibration down.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
And like you said, nothing wrong with that approach.
yeah, I mean,
But I notice it right away when people walk in and they're like, "Oh, I'm trying a class. I'm in from out of town. You know, I'm a brown belt from whatever gym. Like, do I need to wear your uniform? Is there like a dress code?" And as soon as I say, like, "No, dude, just I don't care if you you wear a red gi, you know, or a rainbow colored rash guard. I don't really care. Just come in, have fun." And immediately you see like a smile on their face. They're like, "Oh, okay."
that's
it's
the
not one of those
vibration.
That's the
going up.
vibration.
You know what I mean? That's the
Exactly.
vibration going up.
I mean, you do get some tie-dye geese in there from time to time.
Okay.
With that, you get some wild gi, you know.
yeah.
But I think that's just part of the sacrifice we're willing to make, like I wouldn't want to live in a world where everyone dressed the same, looked the same, acted the same. So why do I want my gym to be a representation of something I wouldn't want to live in, right? I want my gym to be a microcosm of the macro that I want to see in the world. So why not start with what I can control, which is movement art,
I feel like this podcast may disrupt.
It definitely will. And I had
Like,
this
we're-
thought driving over here. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm
when
gonna
we
say
had-
some stuff
When
that's
we
gonna
had
piss
Danny on
people
the
off.
show, we did not.
we have good editors now. We're gonna leave it.
We'll keep them.
When we started as a community, which we'll always be community first. The business came later, but Drew and I had the same type of mindset. We were like, look, if we're going to do this and there's like a business to be had here, we want the business to align with the impact that we want to have on the world. Like we always had that vision in mind, just like you guys did. You sat
100%.
down and you said, okay, look, like here's A. We don't like this about school A. We don't like this about approach B. We don't like the intention was there.
The intention was there, and I'm lucky to have a co-owner like you guys that sees eye to eye with all the, we have similar philosophies, similar methodologies when it comes to teaching jiu-jitsu. We have similar jiu-jitsu itself. So it made it so easy to have a partner who had the same vision and wanted to execute it the same way. Because I know a lot of people who, they have the vision and they have the, the positive ideas that they want to spread, but it's hard to do it sometimes in the jiu-jitsu community. So that as innovators, we want to change the community. We want to change the terrain of jiu-jitsu, so to speak, so that more people can kind of follow along and join us as we try to change not only the atmosphere of gyms, but more importantly, like how jiu-jitsu is taught, how jiu-jitsu is perceived, right? These are things that I take sometimes more seriously because, one day movement art is not going to be here, but hopefully the impact I have on the next generation, maybe the next generation, they decide to go forward and open up gyms of their own. So hopefully the philosophies we teach are the things that carry on. And that's something I think about every day. It's like, how can we have a long lasting impact on jiu-jitsu? And that's something I only could understand by having all of these kind of negative experiences I've had throughout the years coming up through the ranks. So turning like an unfortunate experience into a fortunate outcome.
It is interesting you say that too, because the fact that you put so much thought and intention into your, let's say your legacy for lack of a better word, but the impact you want to have, your students and your from all ages look up to you guys both as like they hang on every word. They like Nick and Danny are. They have so much respect and admiration for them, and they don't have to manufacture it like most of these or other school, like the traditional schools, like, oh, the black belt, like blah blah blah. Whereas Nick and Danny get that respect and admiration subsequently to the way they approach life and jiu-jitsu. And last thing on the gis, the team gis, like everyone, a lot of, not even the people at Movement Art choose to wear the Movement Art gi because they're proud of what the Movement Art logo on their back, not because they have to.
Yeah, so as a result of just giving people the freedom, you know, in return, they want to invest back into the community and they want to represent the community because they understand that it is a space that they can be who they want. So it's kind of funny how that works out.
My most worn hoodie is it's got coffee stains on it now. Is that my the gray Movement Art hoodie? Well, the one thing I wanted to ask you about too is, because we started off kind of hot, but Imagine Sacrifice seems to be, I've just picked up on something that you and Danny say a lot.
Yeah.
Could you tell us in the community like how that plays into Movement Art and your guys' mindset?
Oh yeah, I mean, Imagine Sacrifice is kind of like a mantra we've been kind of repeating to ourselves since like the beginning. And maybe if not those words, like other iterations, like similar sentiments to that, even before we met each other, me and Danny, because, you know, since the beginning, you know, we all have doubtful thoughts in our minds telling us like, you know, is this worth pursuing?
Is it possible?
Is it even possible? You know, are you wasting your time? And that's something that it took me a long time to shake out of my mind. Like basically up until like late brown belt, I had these doubtful thoughts, you know, not so much anymore because you find a way to be confident in the things that you do by chasing passion and seeing the results in the people around you. You know, I find confidence in knowing that the people around me are benefiting from what I'm doing. That gives me confidence. It's not like this false sense of security, right? I see the results. But yeah, I mean, there was a time, right? And I'm sure you guys heard the story about, you know, us opening up a gym during COVID. And that was a time where a lot of people were doubtful. A lot of people online were disparaging us. You know, I had even, you know, my family telling me like, are you sure you want to do this? This is not the best time to do it. Not the best thing to do at this particular time, you know. It wasn't like people were chomping at the bits to do a close contact sport when there was like this infection or this virus
I didn't
spreading.
even think of that.
Yeah.
So like business is hard enough.
You can make the argument that like maybe it's not the best time or maybe it is the best time.
Maybe it is. Well, and there's only one way to find out, right? So we gambled on the possibility that it was the best time, like you just mentioned, and you know, it worked out. But it goes back to the idea of you imagine this idea, you execute it, and that's the sacrifice, right? Like I think at the time me and Danny had literally the exact amount it would take to purchase the business that was selling during the pandemic. It was a martial arts facility that was closing down. They were doing like jiu-jitsu, MMA, CrossFit, all that stuff.
Yeah, everything.
And they were just like, you know, let's just sell the business. And literally it worked out perfectly. The exact amount we had in our bank accounts was the amount it would take us to just get in the doors and just start this operation. And so to kind of just put our whole life savings on the line for this imagination, this idea, like that's a huge sacrifice, you know. At the time, I think we were just like so excited, but looking back, I'm like, oh my god, like, that's crazy, you know. Like,
just to even underscore how aligned we are, actually, like we have a similar vision, intention, action. Like that's what the three things, like basically the same exact.
Literally.
Phrase is Imagine Sacrifice. But did you have any questions regarding
I just want to say Imagine Sacrifice belongs on that.
Well, it's
and I want to pick your guys' brain on that. We have a lot of ideas regarding like, you know, merchandise, and we want to do something regarding Imagine Sacrifice. So I'll pick your guys' brain on that.
Yeah, later, I mean, it's the story and the power behind it, and obviously what it's created.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Which would be amazing.
It's on the sleeve.
I got chills the first time.
Yeah. It's on the sleeve of like of the hoodie that they.
Oh really? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I have it on my belt, so every time it's in kanji. So when I go out and compete, like I just have my belt, Imagine Sacrifice in Japanese kanji, and it just reminds me of like all the sacrifices and things I had to endure to get to that point. Always flipping that stressful situation of competition into something that is more of a blessing, a moment of gratitude for me, right? It's very easy to fall into the mental trap of like, why am I doing this? This is scary. What if I embarrass myself? But when you look at it from the perspective that you get to do this, like you're blessed that you even get to use your whole body functionally, and you're there because you want to. You traveled to set place to compete because you wanted to. It's more of a blessing to be there. So to have that on my belt is always a good reminder of that.
Don't have to, you get to. This would typically be a question at the end of the podcast, but since it came up, I like to ask a lot of our guests who are in both realms, multiple realms, but what's been harder for you, being an athlete or being an entrepreneur?
Wow. So those two things kind of overlap, right? Because as an athlete in jiu-jitsu, you have to have entrepreneurial skills to sell yourself, to leverage sponsorships, to market yourself so people would even want to watch you compete in the first place. So that's definitely like there's some crossover in that aspect. But dude, I am a terrible businessman. Like going into opening up a gym with Danny, I had no idea how to conduct a business. You know, I got my degree in biology, so we don't take any business or economics classes for that degree. So a lot of it I just learned through trial and error. And I would say I'm definitely a better businessman now, like making all the mistakes we've made and playing around with different ideas. But I would say the business end of things is still something I struggle with and a lot more difficult than being an athlete, because when you're an athlete, and this is one thing I don't totally like about athletics, and it's something that I have to keep like grounding myself on and being mindful of, is that being an athlete is an extremely selfish endeavor, right? And every time we're in camp for Worlds or Pans, like the major tournaments, I have to constantly be pulling myself back, because I notice that selfishness will start to seep into other aspects of my life. Like I live with my fiance, and when I'm cutting weight and I'm getting ready for jiu-jitsu, I'm just so tunnel visioned on that goal that our relationship takes like the backseat, you know, and sometimes that's not a good thing. Sometimes you have to pull yourself back and be more conscious and mindful of what you're doing with your actions. And so I'm doing a better job of that. But because it's so selfish, you forget about all the other people around you. You forget that you are living in a world that you're interacting with. And with the business, everything you do is interactive. You always have to be mindful of everybody.
Like the customer, the people matter more than you.
Yeah,
where in your
100%. I take the back seat.
Yeah,
100%.
exactly.
It's like, how am I making every customer feel? How, you know, a white belt comes in, what's their first impression of movement art? Like you said, you had a great first impression of movement art, and I think that's because that's something we take seriously. I call it like the hook, right? Like when you read a book, what grabs your attention is that first sentence, that first page. And if the book doesn't hook you in, you're not going to invest into reading the rest of that book. So like a big thing with movement art is like that first impression. And I don't like the word first impression, because that insinuates that it's like short lasting. It's more of like a glimpse into what your experience is going to be overall, but that experience has to be good on that first day. And so I would say business is definitely more difficult, because there's so many moving parts and you're dealing with so many different personalities and you're catering to so many different people. There's parents, there's the students that are kids. Whereas being an athlete, it's so selfish that you could just be consumed by that goal and kind of block everything else out.
You ever read The Fountainhead? I know you're a reader. But
The Fountain, no.
It's like,
good.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's great. For people like us that are on journeys like this. It talks about this architect that has his vision and nothing else matters, but his vision for the Fountainhead he wants to build, like the building he wants to build, it goes against everything else, and like he literally has to go against society, and everyone tries to tear him down.
That's good.
He loses his girl and all, because like he like literally does not care about anything else other than
It's a classic. It's like
I resonate with that 100%. I'm gonna put that into the list.
But yeah, I agree. I feel like you guys do such a great job at business just because of the intention you put into everything and the energy you're sending its way, that you are naturally like figuring things out.
The good thing is that the product is good, and we invested so heavily into the jiu-jitsu that the business can sometimes afford to suffer a little bit because what people are getting in return is in our opinion, high value.
It's like work hard and be a good person. That's what we say. Like if you're doing those two things, like you can't lose.
No.
You guys are putting your purpose, changing, like you said, like how you said, changing the terrain. You know what I mean? Like you're putting your purpose and your people first. You know what I mean? And then the product and the profit or the business will happen naturally.
Secondary, but it'll be a consequence
happens.
of doing all
exactly,
the right
things.
We
Exactly.
believe that wholeheartedly.
And like you were saying about that, it just bounced back in my mind about changing the terrain of jiu-jitsu and all that. Like you need a battle buddy for that. Like you need you know what I mean?
Yep, you need
Because-
someone on the lookout. Like coast is clear. You need to bounce ideas with someone about because. I truly believe two brains is better than one.
Yep.
I might think I have a good idea, but until I can bounce that idea off of you and you give me constructive criticism, can we really make sure that we're making the right choices? So you're 100% right.
And Danny, and you are for him, I'm sure, like you're insulators for each other sometimes too, because there's a lot of detractors. There's a lot of people that think they know better that are doing nothing, but you can insulate each other and say like, hey, look, like let's stay locked in on the imagine.
Yep.
Let's stay locked in on the sacrifice. That's
and
important.
if we see someone
Very
falling
important.
back on the goals, we can pick each other up and be like,
Yes.
hey, I noticed that you're slowing down. What's wrong? Let's pick it back up. And I think that's huge because you're gonna fluctuate. You're gonna peaks and valleys. You're gonna have times where you're like, I need to take a step away from the business to focus on me. And then that's the green light for the other person to maybe pick up the slack and be like, hey, I got you, bro.
We were just on a coaching call with a guy the other day. Literally said the same exact thing.
Yeah, same exact thing.
A lot of people advise against partners, which is fine. It's like, again, if you don't have the right partner, you're screwed. But like life comes in ebbs and flows, right? Like peaks and valleys. And your job, I literally said the exact same words, Nick, like to pick your partner up when they need it most. Right?
100%.
We were trying to help reframe it for him as an advantage.
Yeah, 100%.
And in partnership, especially people, even when they share the same vision, they're passionate. Like they can be bullheaded. Like you guys will clash at times and all other stuff. So that's a natural part of it. But I think people focus on that and they're like, oh, I don't want a partner. I don't want a partner.
Do you think
But
it's intimidating for people to kind of be in that situation where you have to compromise? Because it's normal to think, I think time to time, if I ran a business by myself, I would definitely have 100% of the decisions where I can dictate exactly what happens all the time.
Yeah.
So you have full freedom to do things the way that you like, but at the same time, you're not getting that other opinion. You're not getting someone's constructive criticism because you can't believe that your opinion is always the one that's right. So to have someone to bounce ideas off of, I think is not a crutch. I think that's a healthy thing to have.
Oh, absolutely.
100%.
We say you are who you hunt with, right? Literally, no human has gotten better without the help of other humans. That's how we do
We're
this.
social beings.
That's how we do this.
That is the hunt.
Yes,
It's a cooperative effort.
Yes, that's how we do
You can't
this.
take down the mammoth without your group.
Exactly. Agreed.
We're 25 minutes in, and I think we should start the podcast. So, can you tell?
How'd you get started in jiu-jitsu?
Can you tell Joey, myself, and the community what was the childhood life like for Nick Salles? Like, how'd you get started in jiu-jitsu? I know you started young.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of sports and things that came into play.
Yeah, there was a lot of. So one thing we were talking about previously is my dad being a martial artist himself and being a huge fan of the martial arts. So I feel like living in a household where martial arts was something that was, encouraged, something that was maybe glorified. We watched Bruce Lee films, Enter the Dragon, Return of the Dragon. We were huge Kung Fu fans. So that sets the kind of foundation for allowing martial arts to, cultivate and grow inside the house. But it really started with me being, I think, first grade. Yeah, I was in second grade. And I was getting bullied a lot. Really bad. People like to talk about bullying, but I was really I'm talking about getting jumped in the bathrooms. And then
Second grade?
This is second grade. And the last incidents where my parents kind of drew the line was when I got cornered by 4 kids. One kid held me down. The other 3 repeatedly just kicked me over and over again, and not a chaperone in sight. Yeah, it was really bad. And I went home with bruises, swelling, and what ended up happening was I had testicular torsion from the amount of times they kicked me.
Dude.
So when my parents saw, and you can imagine what that looks like when you're a second grade kid, when my parents saw that, they were like, we need to bring you to the hospital, like right away. And we went to the hospital. Luckily, you know, everything worked out. It was a very painful experience as a kid. I just remember, like, you know, kind of like internalizing everything that was happening. I was frustrated with the bullying, but now I'm feeling like actual pain. I'm at a hospital. My parents are frustrated. And I just remember it was a really, you know, sad and frustrating time.
That's trauma.
And then my parents going back to the school and complaining and not having anything done. So my parents, so I'm first generation Brazilian. So my parents were immigrants. So English for them was difficult. So communication was difficult for them. And they just felt frustrated. They felt like, you know, I wasn't getting the attention I deserved. Problems weren't being fixed. So they took matters into their own hands. We ended up moving to another town with a better school district. And my parents also decided to put me in martial arts, something a little bit more, you know, full contact. Because I was doing like other things. I was doing gymnastics. I think I dabbled in taekwondo, but nothing crazy. So they found this like hardcore Kyokushin gym where I could finally learn how to defend myself. This was the thing that was going to turn me into a man. Of course it didn't. It was just another like, you know, basically activity I did as a kid. But that was the start, at least, of me realizing, like, if no one's coming to save me, I have to save myself. So I remember this like switch in my personality where when I was younger, I was super avoidant, shy. Like, I was the kid who sat at the back of the class, didn't talk to anyone. And then somewhere around like 4th, 5th grade, you know, watching anime, you know, starting to look up bodybuilding videos and stuff. YouTube is now getting popular. And I remember being like, all right, like, I'm going to save myself. Let's like just see what happens. Let's turn into a superhero. So kid you not, like there was like a switch that went off in my head where I started doing push-ups every morning. You know, my dad was like, all right, I'm going to buy this kid a pull-up bar. I started doing pull-ups. I started doing pull-ups with a backpack on my back loaded with books. Next thing you know, I put my little sister on my back. I was doing pull-ups. I was doing one-arm pull-ups. And one thing led to another. And that's when my dad was like, being the martial artist fan that he was like, all right, maybe there's something here. So then I started wrestling. He put me into the wrestling program. He started training jiu-jitsu. And he's like, hey, if we take wrestling and jiu-jitsu, you're going to be pretty good. You're going to be pretty well off. So he puts me in a jiu-jitsu program around 7th grade. And, and then the rest is history, really. Like,
So you've been consistently training jiu-jitsu ever since 7th grade?
Well, all right. So here's the thing. When I got older, I was a pretty erratic kid growing up. I think just being frustrated and growing up in a very like emotional, avoidant household, one of the ways I figured out to cope with that frustration was to just lash out and do crazy things. So I got suspended from school a lot. Like, I can't even count on both hands how many times I was suspended for fighting people in school.
I was looking at it as fun because you're like, you've had all these years of training.
Yeah, like,
You're probably like, let's go.
Exactly. And I remember my dad being like, oh, like, what is this monster I've created? Like, did I do the wrong thing? Because I was just like, that was my way of coping with a lot of things I was going through. And and I remember in 8th grade, me and I was hanging out with a bunch of hooligans at the time, and we decided that we should break into this restaurant while it was closed and steal cigarettes from the cigarette machine. And of course, as we're walking out with our bags filled with cigarette boxes, the cops pull up. And at that age, they don't put handcuffs on you, but they put us in the back of the cop car. They drove us to the station. We each had to call our parents, and my dad came. And it was just a rough time for my family and myself. And so that kind of pulled me deeper into my relationship with my father, where he's like, all right, I'm going to be more involved. And ever since that day, I would say, is really when I took jiu-jitsu seriously. And that's what eventually led to me in high school, basically training like full time up until 16, where I won the Nogi World Championships as a juvenile. And then after that, I was kind of like, all right, let's focus on college. So I basically just quit jiu-jitsu cold turkey.
Really?
Yeah. And that's when I pursued powerlifting and all that.
Quick.
Did you miss it?
No, because I think I was at that age where it's like, all right, on to the next.
Yeah,
Like, this is
I
just
gotcha.
like a notch on my
Yeah.
belt. Like, let's do something new. Let's do something exciting. I didn't really understand that I got to a point where so many people wish they could reach.
Yeah.
And if I can go back in time and just keep investing in that egg and keep, like working off of that foundation, who knows where I would have been a lot sooner.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have to re-enter my jiu-jitsu passion in my early 20s and then build everything I've built up to this point. Then I could have just done it from 16 onwards, and who knows.
So just all 4 years were solid, clean, like not even a foot on the mat.
So I was teaching jiu-jitsu a little bit here and there. I was filling in for this black belt at the time, Mario, who was a friend of my dad, but I wasn't really training. I would like teach, like be like, all right, here's a guillotine. All right, class is over. Cool. And then I would just like rush home and do whatever
Just for
freshman.
making money.
Yeah, exactly, making money.
So you guys had the powerlifting thing in common. You had that phase. During that phase, Nick told me he was on a very strategic diet of a gallon of milk a day.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yep.
So I was obsessed with like, because everything for me is like, how do you maximize, progress? And so I remember reading like, all right, if you want to gain muscle, you have to gain weight. And then I was doing my own research, like what is the most calorically dense foods?
Yep.
And of course, I arrived at the conclusion that milk is a liquid, so you can chug it, and plus it's calorically dense. So
Sounds delicious. I love milk. Like raw
Oh, yeah,
milk.
milk's
I love milk.
I
I
love
could
milk.
easily.
But
I love
dude,
milk.
I drank a gallon of milk every day for
Plus,
a
it's
year.
like cost efficient, saves you time. You're not
100%,
cooking.
dude.
You're not.
Yeah. And you
Amanda-
can just hold that thing
You
all
just-
day, work out,
Exactly.
hydrate.
My wife's Amanda's a weirdo, but she doesn't like enjoy milk.
I don't understand that.
I don't
Yeah.
get it.
The fatty taste and the creaminess.
Parker
it's-
has
know.
every other night is a steak and a glass of
Yeah.
milk for dinner. Like,
That was the one thing my mom growing up, like we had milk with every meal. Obviously at breakfast, but then like dinner, like my mom would make like ravioli,
Yeah.
and I had a glass of milk with my ravioli. It's the
I
weirdest thing
love
ever,
that.
but
Yeah.
I love
I-
it.
no, I- same thing.
always in milk.
I grew up eating pizza and drinking milk
Yeah.
with my pizza. It's
Yeah.
amazing, dude.
Yeah.
I think the difference. My mom had me on the 2% milk. That's
I was on the whole milk.
probably whole milk.
milk,
yeah,
dude.
that's,
Yeah,
that's
whole or
insane.
nothing,
dude.
bro.
Like,
Save that
like the
2%
milkshake.
for someone
Yeah.
else, dog.
My mom swore she was a hack in the system. I was still a beast,
Yeah.
but she was like 2% milk. There's less fat.
Yeah.
Nah, dude.
Yeah.
We're
Get
going
that.
whole milk.
Whole milk.
But yeah, I did that every day, and I literally went from like 160 to like 215 over the course of not just that year, but like all the
Yeah.
prep I did previously to that too. So yeah, around like freshman year of college, I was walking around like 215 pounds.
Digestion just.
Dude, my stomach done, dude. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't stomach food anymore. So later I would find out that milk actually like breaks down the lining of your stomach. So I was like irritating my own stomach with this diet. And so like it like backfired, because if you want to be a powerlifter, you have to eat a
Yeah,
lot. But now I
yeah.
can't even
Yeah, you
eat.
can't eat.
So, but luckily it was, towards the end of my powerlifting career was the same time I fell back in love with jiu-jitsu. So it kind of worked out for the best. But
What brought you back to jiu-jitsu?
so my dad opened up a gym with this black belt Mario, who I was covering classes for at another gym. And Mario was a character dude. Sometimes he'd be there, sometimes he was not. And so it was a matter of time before I was covering for him at this gym. And then next thing you know, it becomes a full-time job for me.
Yeah.
And now I'm having to train. And then when I'm training, one of my friend, Marcus, he's actually one of the head coaches, and he works the front desk over at Essential with JT Torres. I remember him coming in and we were rolling. He was like, dude, you're so good. Like we had a hard round. He's like why don't you like train seriously anymore? And he was training at Marcelo's at the time. He's like, how about you come with me to Marcelo's? Just give it a try, no commitment, just on a Sunday. And if it's something that you're interested in, maybe you'll start training more seriously. You can train up there. I was like, all right, let's do this. And I was already coming down. I was like 185 at this time. So I was coming down in weight. And I go up there and I get my ass kicked, right? So I have this realization like, wow, I'm not as good as I thought I was. And I'm like, all right, so I have two options. I could pretend this never even happened, finish out my degree. At the time, my goal was to become an embryologist. I would work in the IVF field and just do that. Or I can maybe, take jiu-jitsu a little bit more seriously again and see like where that takes me, keep my options opened. And so I started training at Marcelo's, which at the time was one of the best gyms on the planet. Like some of the top guys were training there at the time. And that's where I would eventually meet Danny. So it's crazy how we were talking about manifesting, right?
Yeah.
And how if you just keep following your gut instinct and you keep leaning into that feeling, things just happen. The way they should happen. You meet people that you're supposed to meet as long as you're open to those possibilities. So that's kind of how I ended up getting back into jiu-jitsu, falling back in love with jiu-jitsu, and meeting my future co-partner for Movement Art. So everything just worked out for the best, I suppose.
When you were in school, that's a very specific goal.
Yeah.
To work with embryos. Was there a reason behind that? I'm curious.
Yeah, I was just always into developmental biology. So we talk about diet all the time. So there was a class that I took for developmental biology where one of the units was on death and dying. And I remember in that chapter we talked about how insulin and the IGF-1 pathway and how those things contribute to you having more oxidative stress and DNA damage, right? And so if you can lower your insulin levels, if you can basically eat less sugar, less processed foods, you just live longer. And I remember being like, dude, this is so interesting. There's got to be more to this. And then I was just researching fields that had to do with developmental biology. And one of the fields was embryology. And I actually knew a guy from a gym that I was teaching at, Keith, who was a senior embryologist. So it just worked out where I can get an internship with him. And he was like, yeah, come try it out. And so.
Yeah, because that's very specific.
Exactly.
For somebody, yeah.
It's crazy that you learn that literally in school to control the blood sugar spikes. And it's something so simple that, and then all the food that we're mass marketed nowadays is literally just doing this to our blood sugar all day. And that's why people end up, and this turned into a health podcast, but that's why people end up with
dude, it's all one package,
issues.
right? But no, we talk about that all the time. I don't have a preferred diet. I know we share a lot of commonalities when it comes to carnivore, and I think that's just more of a personal thing. I don't feel good when I eat gluten, when I eat a lot of carbs. I feel bloated, so I just naturally gravitate towards protein-based meals. That's not to say I think carnivore is the end-all be-all. I just think that's what works for me. But what I think is more rooted in science is the idea that you don't want to eat a lot of sugar. Keep your insulin levels low. And they did studies on worms, and they found that worms who had this DAF2 mutation, which was for the insulin pathway, they lived double the lifespan. Mice with the same kind of mutation, 40% longer lifespans, right? So we know that not consuming sugar results in a longer and more sustainable, healthier lifestyle. So I don't know why people don't. I don't know what people are waiting for.
The interesting thing that we do share those commonalities, but Nick's jacked.
Not yet.
Exactly.
Not yet. Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, if you want to control the populace, have them ride in that wave all day. Sugar, no sugar. If you want to, control the populace, mess with their frequencies. And I think that's why you've seen a lot of.
They want you fat, sick, and stupid, right?
Yeah, they want to make you reliant on the health systems that are in place, which are not only outdated, but they just have been shown to not work the most efficient way possible. I believe in individualized healthcare. I think people need to be provided with the best treatments for them, and not necessarily this generalized treatments for people, right?
For sure.
And I think that starts with diet, finding out what nutrition, what diet works best for your body, and go from there.
I say the same thing. I eat whole foods, but my rule is I don't eat things that make me feel like trash.
Yeah.
And you know what? I did that for a good part of my life because I just thought it was normal.
And did you have to try? Was it trial and error?
Yeah, it's trial and error.
100%. Elimination diet, basically. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And log the whole nine. Yeah. You know what I mean? Right. Okay, I had this. This is the way I felt. It was at this time.
That's so important, journaling. Because I was skeptical. I was like, there's no way carbs make me feel worse. All of the current nutritionists and dietitians are telling us that for sports, you need carbs to be, efficient, to perform at your highest level. I'm like,
Maybe it's just the type of carb.
maybe it's just the type
Like
of carb.
it
But dude, I tried. Rice is a little bit better, but
Mm-hmm.
the best for me is 100% a nice ribeye with butter.
I'm there with you, dude. I'm there with
Maybe
you.
some kimchi. We talked about eating
Yeah.
some fermented veggies.
Well, there are, and maybe you know the exact scientific term, but high carb oxidizers, low, medium, moderate.
Yeah.
Like
Mm-hmm.
like we're genetically predisposed to burn a set amount
Yeah.
of carbs. Like
Yeah, like I found out that in Serbia, like that demographic of people are some of the best carb metabolizers on the planet.
Yeah.
So when I went there with my fiance, that's where I proposed to her. That's where her family's from. Dude, every meal is bread, bro. Like it's bread with cheese, with smoked meat. And did I tell you, like 4 days in, like I'm not using the restroom, dude.
Yeah.
And I use the restroom morning, afternoon, night.
Yeah, you're regular.
4 days into this trip, I'm like, bro, I haven't used
something's
the
up.
toilet yet. Like,
Was
what's
this
going
before
on?
or after the proposal?
This was before, luckily.
Okay.
So I'm like looking like, and like her mom makes the best food and they're so generous and they want me to partake in their traditional meals.
Yeah.
But I'm like, look, can we sneak out and like maybe go somewhere where there's a salad? Like I need fiber in my diet, like, or else I'm just not going to survive.
Yeah.
So, but for them, it's totally fine. Like they're built for that. They've adapted to eat that way. Me, I can't do it. I'll just combust internally.
It's funny to say the elimination diet thing. It's because I did like super strict carnivore, and just recently I pretty much unlocked the reasons for all my gut issues to this point, because I got my gallbladder removed when I was 16 or 17, and I was like, I've tried everything for my gut. Like I've literally tried every. Joey knows, like all these years, I've literally just been on this journey. I was like, I'm doing carnivore, like strict. I was telling you, like, I'm not touching anything other than meat, and I was eating, and I'm like having different reactions to things. I'm reading all these things, like people are having all this success. And I'm like, I just like don't feel good. Like I was like, I felt good. Like energy, inflammation was down. Like no blood sugar spikes. I felt amazing, but my gut was just still.
Yeah.
And I was like, why am I not having the success? And then I go down another wormhole. I'm like, maybe it's my gallbladder. Like not like I'm not releasing the bile the gallbladder stores the bile released by the liver or whatever.
Well, I'm worried about that too because in my family we have a lot of gastro issues. So I have uncles with Crohn's disease, diverticulitis. My dad has stomach ulcers. He's been hospitalized for them.
Damn.
So eating a red meat-based diet scares me. I'm not gonna lie. It's like one of those things where I'm like, all right, I feel good on it now, but we need to figure out like maybe a more long-term solution. So we spoke about eggs. Eggs are like a lighter chicken. Doing more of that, even though
More of the story for me was that they allowed me to understand, like, okay, like what I figured out my problem. Like, so now I'm on these like bile salts, like that I should have been taking they don't tell you that when they rip your gallbladder. That you're gonna need gallbladder support for the rest of your life. But it's my past week or so, my life has been like literally like life changing.
No, that's amazing, dude.
Still doing carnivore with the bile salts. Right now.
Modified, which is fine because you need to figure out like what works for you. You know?
Like, I
Like,
felt good on, but I was doing like super. Like you still working some fun stuff, like you're not like super strict carnivore.
no, I'm not super. Like I told you, like on the weekends, I'll let loose. Like last weekend was my birthday. My mom made me a tray of like a tres leches cake, which is like condensed milk, heavy cream,
Very familiar
whipped
with it.
cream
like,
on top.
For me, like I just need that. Like I'm not that crazy. That's like
Yeah, I'm not suggesting to eat that like every weekend,
But
but
like I like to be able to have like the Ninja Creamies, like me and my wife make like the ice cream, protein ice cream. Like I just need that variety. Like it takes all of the enjoyment out of any enjoyment out of eating.
and I think that's everything in life. You have to cycle it, right? Like you can't, like even jujitsu, like there's loading, deloading, like tapering periods. Like you train like 3 times a day every day, and then that 1 week, that last week of the month, you start to deload a little bit. Maybe you only train once. Maybe you just do mobility and like some light jogging or whatever. I think that's super important. Same with diet. It's like you can't go gun ho on one thing.
Exactly.
That's how and Danny could probably speak on this too. Like we developed like eating disorders very early on in our jiu-jitsu careers because of this crash dieting, right? Like, so
that's why I had to get my gallbladder out. Because I was cut for wrestling. I was like cutting weight.
There you go.
I went from 260 to 160.
Dude, I was cutting 15 to 20 pounds like every month.
Yeah.
Right. So I would deplete myself of everything I want to eat. I would just eat like 1,000, maybe tops 1,200 calories a day. My Whoop was telling me I was burning 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day. So the deficit's crazy, not sustainable at all. And then as soon as I was done competing, I would just eat everything. It was Caesar's Palace, the Bacchanal Buffet, it's Pink Box Donuts, it's Raisin Canes. It's like, and like,
Oh my God.
that's like, you're eating like 6 meals a day for a week,
like,
just to like get back that dopamine.
Your gut is like just trying, like, okay, what are we doing here, dude?
Yeah.
Like,
Then your brain starts to chain things.
Now, as we're having this podcast, I'm realizing how my stomach must feel towards me. My stomach hates me, dude.
over the years,
The gallon of milk. No, oh
dude.
man, dude. The kimchi hits good.
Yeah,
now.
it keeps it.
I love kimchi. My stomach does not love
Really?
kimchi,
Really?
but I love kimchi.
That means
Is it
Yo,
maybe it's a spice?
It's a spice.
You know what
Yeah,
that?
it's spice.
Oh yeah.
I love kimchi, man.
That's the one I do a lot of probiotic foods now, like kefir, yogurt, like
Yep.
but kimchi. Like Amanda eats the kimchi. I don't know.
You're like, nah. dude,
I haven't even really tried it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I always just like
it's
try
the
it.
smell's off-putting for you.
What about sauerkraut for you guys?
I love sauerkraut.
I'm
loves
not
sauerkraut.
opposed to it. I just think kimchi is like sauerkraut with more flavor.
Yeah, it
I gotta
is.
try.
It
I
is.
never
It's
really
like
gave it a
superior
Yeah,
sauerkraut.
it's
like-
elevated sauerkraut.
I do skirt steaks, and I slice them like real thin,
Yeah.
and I just mix it in a bowl with kimchi.
Ooh.
I'm putting kimchi on my
And I do the
list.
same thing. Like
That's amazing.
I do the
I
same
do that
thing
too.
with
Yeah.
What's it
with
taste like?
kimchi.
Yeah.
It's like spicy cabbage.
And I think with the umami of the steak, the fatty, like saltiness of the steak, you
Yes.
have this like slightly like fermented taste. I don't know if you like funky tasting stuff. It's a little bit of
Funky
funk,
in what
but in
way?
a good way.
Yeah,
I mean, I like yogurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yogurt's a little funky.
No, this is different funk.
Different, bro.
Yeah, this is different funk.
I bet you. I bet
Yogurt
you.
kimchi is a big leap, you know? Like I don't want to get
I'll
your
make-
hopes up.
The other thing I do is like burger bowls. So I'll make burgers.
I love that. Yeah.
And then I'll put sauerkraut in there and just some spicy mustard, and I do the same thing. I just like
Yeah.
mix it all
Yeah.
up. Man, it's delicious.
Oh my god, that sounds amazing. You guys are making me hungry.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
back on. So you end up at Marcelo's.
Yeah.
Now, how were you a purple belt at the time?
I was a brown belt. Yeah.
So how was that experience? Like, was that like, did you enjoy the environment, or was it like so I'm moving on to moving art eventually, but like, as far as the environment there, like, did you enjoy your time there? Or?
So this is the thing, right? We were talking about how like all these things that come into work when you're trying to develop an environment that's, you know, conducive not only to learning, but for making people feel welcome and making people feel a part of that community. What Marcelo did right was giving us a space where we could train hard and maybe troubleshoot things and try things out. What I struggled to have at Marcelo's, and this is not just talking down at the staff or the facility itself, I just didn't feel like I had the camaraderie and the support system to allow my ideas to kind of flourish and to kind of cultivate the ideas I had. So a lot of times, you know, I would be drilling a berimbolo off to the side, and one of the higher ups, right, like one of the coaches / top competitors would look at me and be like, "That's not going to work. Why are you wasting your time doing that?" You know, and I'm like, I'm just trying to get better. You know, I wouldn't say that. I'd just be like, okay. And I'd just continue drilling.
Yeah.
But it was just that kind of feedback. It was always, it was never constructive. It was always like, you shouldn't be doing this. You should be doing that. And I feel like if they had that support system, if they kind of nurtured the curiosity that me and Danny both had, we would have had a better experience. But because of that, I feel like it was more of just a testing ground for us. Like I would be in PA or in Jersey with all these ideas of how to play a position or what reactions I was working on. And then I would go to Marcelo's and use those high level opponents or teammates to test things out rather than growing with the team, which is something that at Movement Art, we're trying to get better together. Like if I don't teach you how to beat me, I'm failing you as a coach.
Yeah.
And especially like, I'm not just your coach, I'm your teammate. So if
Yeah.
I can't teach you how to be a good teammate for me to get ready for all these competitions, then I'm failing you as a teammate. And we just didn't have that camaraderie at Marcelo's, unfortunately. Now, Marcelo is an amazing human being. There was an instructor there, Paul Schreiner, who really helped me out with like how to sell myself as an instructor, how to teach people in like a private like lesson. Like he gave me a lot of tips on how to do those things, and I learned a lot about business and how to manage a facility as large as Marcelo's. Like they had over 1,000 students.
Oh,
Like, it was
really?
crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. Like
I
70
didn't
students in
realize
one
that.
class.
Wow.
So just see, because I worked there, I was an assistant instructor. So to be able to be behind the scenes and see all that stuff go on was like, I can't even put a dollar sign on how valuable that experience was.
Yeah.
But unfortunately for my personal growth, it wasn't very conducive to learning and getting better the way that I wanted to get better. Like, I was getting tougher, but I wasn't becoming more technical, which I think, so one thing we're trying to do with movement art is we're trying to change the way jiu-jitsu is not only perceived, but how it's taught. Okay. And maybe you guys can attest to this, but I feel like for decades now, the predominant teaching style has been in like an intuition-based teaching, like an intuition-based approach, where your instructor has spent decades on the mat and subconsciously they've acquired all of this experience, pattern recognition. They've, kind of intuitively came across these techniques that maybe work for them, but they can't quite explain to you why it works. And this ends up being what we call like a show and tell class. You show up to class, the instructor teaches a technique, and it's more like a narration of what's going on as opposed to a lecture about why this position works, why this move works, why you should do it, all the whys, hows, and when. And so instead you get, all right, guys, we're going to grab the wrist. Now you're going to grab your own wrist. Now you're going to put the arm behind their back. Now they're going to tap. Which, unless you're going to spend 5 hours a day on the mat, it's just not going to work for you.
Yeah.
It's just not. So what made me and Danny see each other and have that relationship click at first sight, right? That sounds pretty funny. Like love at first sight. Like jiu-jitsu. But is because we both came to the same conclusion, but like from different places. He was in PA, I was in New Jersey. And the idea was that there's a better way to approach jiu-jitsu. And in this way, it's more of a strategic approach, which is essentially you can quantify all the reactions in jiu-jitsu. And if you have a system that accounts for all the probabilities and all of the expected outcomes, you can play an optimized strategy to win the game. Because at the end of the day, jiu-jitsu is a game, right? It's not a martial arts anymore. That's not what's happening. We can both agree on the terms of the rules. We can agree that it's a zero-sum game in the sense that you're going to lose or I'm going to win or vice versa. We're both trying to win the game. And so why not teach jiu-jitsu from the framework of game theory, essentially, as opposed to just this intuitive, feeling thing. Like, hey, Drew, no, you just got to go faster. You just got to go stronger. You just got to feel it, man. And this is something that we're trying to change, and we're trying to get people to realize, like, if you do it this way, not only are you going to get better faster in comparison to these intuitive types, but you're going to now understand what you're doing, and you're going to be able to pass on that information to other people.
That was what led me there too, is because I was in that old school way of learning, and I was asking questions to my instructor myself. I'm like, I would have success against white belts that would come in and whatever, but against anyone at my skill level, I was like, I'm not having success. Like, there has to be a different way to approach this, and you can't answer the question that I'm asking. And so, like, it's just so interesting, like, that I did end up there because it's exactly what I was looking for. You know what I mean? I was like there, and I only went because the first time that Sean told me I should go there, like, you should train with us. But the fact that, like, it was exactly what I was looking for, and, like, I was like, it's a problem solution. Like, they're like, half the time when they're explaining jiu-jitsu in the old school way, it's like, it's not how do we get here and what happens if this happens. It's here's what, just do this.
Just do this.
And
Exactly.
Do it enough and you'll get the feel.
Exactly. Which is completely wrong.
Yeah.
Like, that's literally not how your brain learns jiu-jitsu, right? Like, we can go deeper into that. But
And there's also 10 other things that can happen when you get there.
yeah.
Like,
So okay, there's so many variables, right? There's a million things that can happen. So why not teach jiu-jitsu from the perspective of, let's corner the person into a position where you can limit their responses and where you know all of the most likely outcomes. And that's all we do. It's like, all right, get to this position. These are the most likely reactions based on data analysis, like based on the thousands of matches we've watched, based on our personal experience, they're going to give you one of these 5 reactions. Just get really good at solving those reactions, and guess what? You'll be more than ready to confront whoever it is because they're human. They could only perform those set reactions.
And I will say this, if anyone watching this is looking to learn more about the movement art way of doing jiu-jitsu, like we just dropped the If You Want Technique series last week, which was literally when I came to Dan with the idea, like I was like, this is what we're thinking of. We only need like 3 videos. He's like, well, what about 20? Like, we'll do 20. Like, bro, like what? Like,
I was so
Let's
pumped.
go.
We were talking about it, and I was like, well, what do you think? Would the guys be up for it? And then I said, we were talking, and Joe's like, yeah, videos are going to be done. I'm like, well, how many are there? And he's like, like 20, 25 videes. I'm like, holy shit.
And the feedback has been amazing. Like
Insane.
I just checked the other day, and I think like there's 3 videos nearing like 1,500 views, right? In just like a week's time. So that's phenomenal. Like, to be able, and thank you guys for giving us a platform to share those techniques on. Because again, I think another thing that's very dogmatic in jiu-jitsu is this idea of these are our secrets, and you can't show the enemies our secret, right? Where our idea is kind of like, why not just weaponize generosity? Like if you believe that jiu-jitsu is like math, and you want everyone to understand how to play the game like that, who cares if they know your techniques?
Exactly.
Because what comes down to it is not the techniques themselves, it's how you apply those techniques.
And that's an abundant mindset too, that not like literally takes years for people to ever like get to the level of comprehension of. And when you are doing the work that you and Danny are too, like that's the thing. Like you don't worry about people taking your secret, because no one's gonna be better than you at it, and no one can take it away from you.
There's so many layers to it, dude. It's like, it's not just the information. It's like, how are you effectively applying that information in practice? Because I can teach you all of my moves, but that doesn't mean you know how to incorporate it into your game by training with the proper methodology. So it's like,
speaking to me directly.
Dude, the top chefs have recipe books.
Exactly.
Literally, like outlining
It's the same exact thing.
1.5 teaspoons of this, like, and guess what?
Why does mine not taste the same?
Exactly.
Why does mine not taste the same?
It's funny. Like I was talking to Gabby, one of our the black belts over at Movement, and it's in jiu-jitsu. Like you're either like going other places to learn, or going other places, or to like pick up different things. And it's like, well, we just want to train here all the time. So whenever anyone invites me anywhere else, it's like, if I'm going to train, I'm going to train at Movement. Like people are traveling all over the world to come here. Like why would I go somewhere else?
That's amazing.
And Dane actually said something the other day. He's like, we were watching the kids class with Parker and Odin, and he was like, it's nice being at a school where when you leave class, you don't have to go home and watch instructional the whole time. He's like, you feel full. After, like, he's like, my brain is plenty full after this class.
Like, why? Like, you guys are paying us for a service. Why are you leaving the restaurant still hungry? Like, it makes no sense. And that's one of our things. Like, we try to over deliver every class. Like, I want your brain hurting.
Dude,
and look,
that's say the one
as
thing
much as
is
your
like,
body.
As much as your body.
You're and I feel like they know by now, but like the other day in class, Nick was taking. That's a cool thing too. Like they take each other's classes. So like,
Dude,
Danny's
I learned so much from Danny's
that's
class.
amazing.
Yeah. So and Danny's teaching some fucking thing. And I'm literally sitting there. My brain is hurting, and I look over. I just see Nick's looking at the other side of the mat. He's like. I'm like, Nick, you saw my brain.
It was like, I think we even joked about it. It was like I could see the monkey inside his head. Like,
bro,
his
that's
symbols.
with the
how it
symbols.
is, dude. That's literally. I mean, I feel much better now, being like 5 months or so. But like, the first few months are
hard.
Hard,
Yeah.
dude. Like,
But look, would you rather be in a class where there's so much information to go through that, okay, if you leave with 10% of it, you're still better off than you were before the class.
Exactly.
Than a class where you're left hungry for more information. So my philosophy on that is like, okay, there's everyone from white belts to black belts in the class. I'm going to teach to the highest standard. I'm going to teach to that black belt. And if you're the white belt, just try to learn 10% of what that black belt's trying to achieve. You know, if I show a series of 6 reactions and you learn 1, that's a successful day. I think it's when students try to maybe bite off more than they can chew, and they're like, I'm going to learn everything he just showed, and then they're like, oh no. Well,
there's definitely something
it's
to that.
it's impossible. It's you couldn't do that. Like I feel like when people get involved in jiu-jitsu, they like to dive, just want to dive in. You can't do that at Movement. Like you just couldn't. You physically, you've seen the series. Like it's like literally impossible to comprehend all that
No,
information.
you're better off kind of digesting it piece by piece and going back to the beginning and setting down that next layer of understanding.
Yeah.
And look, jiu-jitsu, if you look at it as like a bunch of mini games put together rather than this giant game, dude, it's so much more digestible. We play games in class where it's just about pummeling your feet to the inside and not allowing the person to dictate your heels being close to your butt or not. And that in itself is a mini game. When you compete or when you roll with someone, you start with that mini game. Who initiates the exchange?
Yeah.
Do they grab your ankles and you can't pummel, so now you have to frame and do guard retention, or do you pummel your feet and start attacking right away? So how good you are at that specific mini game dictates the rest of the round.
Yeah.
And when you teach like this, when people realize it's just a bunch of little games stringed together, it's a lot more digestible, I feel like, rather than like, oh my God, I'm a white belt. How am I going to learn how to pass guard, play guard, do submissions, escape positions, do takedowns? Like it's
What's crazy is too, at Movement, you have to learn it, understand it, comprehend it, and then apply it.
Yeah.
Which is because like they're not easy things to do either. Like it's like some of this stuff is rather challenging from an athletic, in my opinion, like from an athletic perspective. So I'm like constantly like.
Yeah, but that's why we teach you guys how to make decisions, right? So that's why the way we teach with the strategy in mind is so important, because then you remove the guesswork out of the equation. Exactly. So if I just teach you a Kimura from close guard, I'm like, all right, guys, roll. One, how likely are you to end up in close guard, right? A million things can happen. So how do I know you're going to end up in close guard? And two, how do I do I know how to do a Kimura, but how do I get the Kimura, right, is a whole other problem. So I think like teaching you guys how to think from positions. So like instead of teaching Kimura, I would teach you how to structure yourself in the close guard position, how to align yourself, how to off balance the person. And based on each of those initiations, what are the most probable outcomes? Yeah. So when you pull them this way, what is the most probable thing to happen based on data? Since that's the reaction you're most likely going to get, this is the solution for that. So you remove the guesswork. So I think like it's easier for you guys to apply it, especially if we do like positional sparring. Yeah. Where, like we're just going to start in close guard.
I love it.
It's a lot easier.
Like 50, 60%. You always say like.
Yep.
All right. So again, back on track. So you got opened the Movement Art location, but during this whole Marcelo's journey, COVID, etc., you've been competing the whole time. What were some like peaks and valleys of that journey, and like what is your big goal, right? Like in jiu-jitsu or?
Yeah, I think my goals have definitely shifted over the time that we've opened up Movement Art. I think going into Movement Art, I was thinking like, my priority is becoming a world champion, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And Movement Art is just a vehicle to accomplish that goal. So whether it be like I have a facility that I can train out of, and then I have students who, pay tuition, and that tuition can then be used to travel and compete, that's going to be my pathway to winning worlds. And, as a black belt, I've already competed at worlds, I think like 4 or 5 times already, losing very narrow matches to some of the guys that end up winning the whole bracket. I had a really tough showing at Pan Am's the one year where I made it to the quarterfinals, and everything was great up until the last 2 minutes of the match, and that dictated the outcome of the match, thus losing it and not moving on to the semifinals. So that's definitely a hard pill to swallow. I think about that match every time. But I think as I've evolved as an athlete, I've also evolved as a coach and as a business owner. And I think I've taken those responsibilities a lot more seriously. And so my goals have kind of shifted. Like, would it be win worlds? Sure. And I'm going to continue down that path. But I'm also now equally invested in my students who are now showing so much potential, dude. It's totally different. When you first open up a gym and everyone's a blank canvas, you don't know what's going to happen. They're just bodies, faces, they're just names. And then as you build a relationship with them over the months, over years, now like 4 years later, we have students that they themselves can become world champions 100%. So now it's like I'm at that phase where I'm like, okay, how much longer do I invest in myself until I see that this person has so much potential? I would rather invest all those resources into them. So I'm kind of I'm not quite there yet, but like I said, I'm investing a lot more into students these days. And like we talked about earlier in the podcast, becoming less selfish as a whole, as a person. and just just enjoying the process, dude. If we get there, that would be amazing. I mean, all the hard work is being done. I train every day, multiple times a day. I study
That's true.
every day, and but I'm also equally, if not more, invested in my students these days, into the business, and that's what kind of brings me more happiness nowadays.
You
for
could
sure.
I mean, the energy you guys put into coaching is just like, you could tell that's almost what you're here to do. You know what I mean? Like maybe the competition was the vehicle that got you here, but it's like, damn,
Exactly.
it's like when you guys are coached on the mats, it's like, yo, they're I told you after Parks Guys one day, I was like, you're thriving out there, dude. Like,
dude, exactly. Like when you tell me, Parker goes out there and he has an amazing match showing jiu-jitsu that he's learned over the course of the last couple of months, and he's applying it against the best kids on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I hear that. I'm like, all right, how much time do I have left? Because that's the future.
Exactly.
I know it's a matter of time till I'm the past, and so I'm kind of shifting my focus more on the people around me, so that I can continue the legacy of movement art through the students.
And nothing feels better than helping other people. Nothing feels better than serving other people, especially when you see the gifts that were once yours that you gave to them. You see them putting them in action. Nothing feels better.
No, dude, that's the
so
best.
your description of like this was the goal or the dream, but it's like it's transforming into this thing. Like I get it. Like I understand.
And it's like it's not something that you really foresee. It's just something that happens.
Yeah.
It's really cool. There's this guy Arthur C. Brooks, and he talks a lot about like how when people near that like last third of their life, like how you have to really start to transcend your own mortality to appreciate the last couple years of your life. I feel like a lot of people hold on to wealth and all these things as a way to forget about death. And in reality, the best way to confront death is to be aware of it and to like almost like live in it and visualize it and accept it. So it's the same thing with like, I feel like one day the competitor in me will die. I'm going to have to send that version of me off. That selfish version of me is going to be buried one day, but I'm looking forward to the next phase, which is just like living in the moment and seeing everyone around me thrive. These days, like you're saying, I look forward to that the most.
Yeah. We could probably go on for another straight half hour on the whole death thing you just brought up, but we'll keep that. We'll keep that for another show.
You see, obviously, like in our artwork and our mantras, our designs, like the fact that you will die and mortality just is a huge aspect.
I think it's the Bhutanese. Are you familiar with them?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
So
I'm deep into Buddhism. There's a meditation called Maranasati, which is from Buddhism. It's a death meditation. That's something I do every day.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the picture, but I have weeks of my life calendar.
Yeah.
On my wall.
Yep.
And
I was just telling Marilee about that.
Yeah, really?
I literally was like, yeah, you should. I haven't told her to get it, but I was like,
dude, you should 100%. So you fill in all the black dots, and you have this constant reminder of how many empty dots there are in your life. I'm nearing like I'm not halfway, but I'm nearing that halfway mark.
Bro, they have one, so you can get the calendar. Stu told me about the calendar way back in the day, like years ago. They also have like an online version.
Yeah,
where,
nice.
It'll just paint like a calendar for you, so you can look at it visually.
Yeah.
And my dots, man.
Yeah.
There's not many like empty dots left.
What like better than caffeine, better than probably any stimulant money can buy is just a reminder early in the morning that one day you're gonna die, and you got to fill in this little black dot.
That's the thing with the Bhutanese. They have to think like I think it's 5 or 6 times a day about death. They have to meditate on death, and it's one of the happiest places in the world, most joyous places in the world to live.
100%.
And that's what truly frustrates me about society and life is I live all my time in gratitude. Just I'm truly grateful every day just for another day filled with potential and opportunity. I feel as though a lot of people in the world spend a lot of time getting frustrated or worked up or in a bad mood over just such trivial things. And I just don't understand that people truly realize that our time here is limited and tomorrow isn't promised. And that's something that I think what I've gone through in my life has reminded me that it's like not to be taken for granted.
As daily work.
Yeah.
Like that's hard work to do on a daily basis. I'm sure that there's some days you don't want to do a death meditation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you don't
Do
wake
it
up every
almost
day and
every
say, I feel
Yeah,
so great
yeah,
right now.
yeah.
I'm going to do a death meditation.
Yeah.
No, sometimes you wake up and you're like, I'm stressed out. Things aren't really going the way that I need them to go. In
And I
whatever
try to remind
avenue.
myself too, like, and I was having this conversation with my sister because she's going through something right now, and I was like, look, you have to be the change that you want to see in the world. And I know it's as cliche as it sounds. If you stop believing that there's good in the world or that positivity exists, then that's the moment you might as well just die.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? So even if everything looks gray and things aren't looking out for you, you have to believe, you have to have faith that good does exist. And if you believe you're good, then of course it exists because you're a representation of the world around you. So I truly believe like in that. And with the death meditation, all those things is what, you're going to have bad days. But if you can reflect on those things, those are the things that get me out of bed, get me going for sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we can bring it in for a landing here, but can you leave the Fuel Hunt community with one piece of advice, whether it's life, nutrition, jiu-jitsu, etc.? But like what, if you're speaking to them right now, what is the message you want them to have?
Yeah, I mean, one thing jiu-jitsu has taught me is that, no matter how much pressure you're feeling or how stressed you are or how tough things get, there's nothing better than just being in the moment, taking a deep breath, and trying to figure out things out in your life with a clear mind. A friend of mine, Jeff, he wrote a book called The Angry Buddha. And it's essentially about how jiu-jitsu is the highest form of meditation, right? Because you can show up to a yoga studio and you could sit on the floor, room temperature air, things are good, and you can do your meditation. And it's easy, right? And he said one thing that stuck with me. It's like true meditation is when someone has you in a rear naked choke and your options are to sink or swim. It's to tap or to think deeply about the situation. Try to get out with a clear head. Exactly. Yeah. Think of a way out, and you can apply that to side control, but most importantly, you can apply that to life, and you can apply that to, situations that happen within the household or things that might happen at work. So, that's just something jiu-jitsu has given me. It's just like whenever you're in a bad spot, slow things down, take a deep breath, and try to think of all the positivity and try to think of a way to get out of this bad situation.
Love it. And it was called, the book is Angry
Buddha.
I'm going to check that out.
I'm
Check that out.
You got anything else?
No, I mean, I wanted to say thanks for the flowers at the beginning. I don't think that maybe I had the opportunity to say that, but you said that some of the things that we've done, you're trying to apply, and I see that, and like we look up to you guys as well. So it's mutual.
Wow. Thank you guys.
And I know that when you take pictures after training, you always keep space for me. I will.
So we have to
make
manifest that to happen in real life.
I will make it. Drew will tell you that I do 3 things. I have the same day every day. I'm very I don't have much free time, but it's gonna happen. Don't worry.
Yeah.
That happened so naturally though.
That was
like Danny was standing like an awkward
hilarious.
distance away from me, and I was like, "Yeah, what? Like, are we not friends?" And he's like,
That's
"Yeah,
hilarious.
that's room for Joey."
It's
Dude,
hilarious.
it's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, I look
we're going to
forward- I look
continue to
forward
do
to
that
it.
until you finally show up.
I look forward to it. Well, like I said, my family's right around the corner, so it's only a matter of time.
Let's do it, dude.
And I was supposed to say thank
What are you
for-
doing next week?
I know.
Well, if you find Nick or Danny, they're literally all they
I'm
live.
cutting down trees next week.
They
Maybe
live,
we get to that.
They live there, so
Yeah, you can literally pop in.
You
We'll
have
be there.
Sundays, right? You have Sunday classes?
Sundays is actually the only day we
Okay.
have.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so Saturday. It is.
Yes,
but-
let's do Saturday.
Yeah.
Nick, thank you for being here, and thank you for
thank
being
you.
a great coach for me and Parker, and thank you for the environment you created the movement. Seriously.
You want to ask where they can?
Oh yeah.
Where?
Where can the Fuel Hunt community find you?
Yeah. We have an Instagram page for Movement Art. That's Movement Art at Movement Art Jiu-Jitsu on Instagram. And the website is movementart.online. We're actually going to be opening a new platform for some of the technique videos that we want to put out there. So stay on the lookout. If you're interested in learning more jiu-jitsu from me and Danny, just, follow us on Instagram. Sign up to the newsletter on the website. That way you can stay updated on when our online platform comes out. And if you want to follow my shenanigans, see my technique videos, I've been posting a lot of comedic bits just out of boredom.
That
really.
the other day. Yeah, I liked it.
If you want to see that stuff, you can follow me at that Nick Salles. But again, thank you guys for having me. It's been it's amazing to finally meet you too.
It's been a long time coming.
And I feel like I'm excited to see how this relationship will grow, and
same.
I want to support you guys, and I feel the same from you guys. So thank you guys.
Likewise, brother.
All right. Without further ado, Eagles, always choose hard work over handouts. Always choose effort over entitlement. And remember, no one owes you. No one owns you. You're one of the few. Let's hunt.
What's